Hello and welcome to your first HTML5 tutorial. My name is Brian Hafferkamp and I will be taking you through a full online course teaching you some of the basic elements of the HTML language. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and I'm specifically going to be teaching about HTML5, which is a new specification. It's a new version of the language of HTML. Now we're looking here at something called the Mozilla Developer Network. If you're familiar with Mozilla, they're the people who create Firefox, the web browser Firefox. And this is sometimes called MDN, but you can find it at developer.mozilla.org. And it's an invaluable resource for learning all types of technologies. You can see here that they have HTML and CSS and JavaScript and even HTTP. So there are lots of different references and guides, and they have definitions and best case usage and things like that for several different technologies. So this is a really go-to place for web developers. So as you increase your development skills and you have questions and you do online searches, you're going to see that MDN comes up a lot at the top of the searches for those specific elements. So I would encourage you to use this site and use it a lot as you have questions and as you need to reference things. So HTML5. HTML is like the skeleton of the web, so it's the bones of the web, the structural elements. So when we create a new website, the browser looks at our HTML first and renders the HTML, and then the HTML will reference any other styles like CSS or JavaScript for interactions, and then it will apply those things to the HTML. So that's what we're going to be learning about first. You need to learn the bones. CSS you can think of as kind of like the skin, the parts that you see, and then JavaScript is sort of like the muscles, which provide the movement and allow you to interact, in space. So if you think about all three of those technologies together, that's what you see most of the time on the web, in web applications, in applications on your phone. You're looking at all of those technologies working together. So it's the web. The modern web is a beautiful thing, and HTML5 makes many of the things that we do better. Some of the things it does is it increases the semantics. So we're, instead of using language that doesn't mean anything, we're using language that means something. It does allow for 2D graphics and some effects, and then it lets you create more sophisticated themes using CSS and some other things too. So some of these different things, multimedia, maybe you'll take advantage of it. It makes audio and video easier on the web, and includes some special tags just for those. Alright, so let's get into well, how do you do it? How do you use it? How do you set up your environment? We call it our environment. And our environment is all the technologies, all the software platforms that we use in order to create a website. And there are many different things that you can use. I'm going to take you through using codepen. Now the beauty of codepen is that it sets up a platform for you and allows you to just start writing code very quickly. I think of it as like a scratchbook or a sketchbook for an artist. You would use a sketchbook to just kind of get down your ideas very quickly, and I think of codepen in the same way for a front-end web developer. So I can just point and click and add different technologies that I want to use, and then I can just start writing the code in those technologies. And codepen is great because it allows me space. If I start a new pen, you can see, so it allows me space here. This is my canvas where I see everything show up. So if I type something in, it shows up automatically. This is called browser refresh. and it does that automatically. So any changes I make over here in the code, it'll show up automatically. Those are things that I can turn off in the settings. It also allows me to just focus on HTML, or I can just focus on CSS, or I can just focus on writing JavaScript. And then it allows me also to see how these things look in different, you can see down here, 320 pixels. This is like the size of an iPhone 5. So I can check from that size all the way to more of a desktop size. So it allows me a lot of different things, and I can change the view here. So I can, if I prefer to write my code this way, then I can have all three things open and still see a little preview. Now, one of the things that I really like about this is that you can also export your code. So if I just save this, and then I come up here and I look at my HTML, so I can actually export my HTML. So even if I write everything in this program, then I could come in here and I can use a different text editor. So maybe I have just like an idea for something and I want to get it out. Then I can come in here and I can export the HTML or the CSS or the JavaScript, and I could copy that into maybe another project or a full text editor. So I like this for fleshing out ideas, because it really helps me to move quickly. I don't have to set up a full development environment. It's already set up for me. And like I said, through this tutorial, at least the first parts of the HTML5 tutorial, we're going to use this just because it's so easy to get in and out, and we're just kind of getting little just these little small topics that I'm just going to show you, and then we'll go into a fuller image editor, a text editor, code editor, whenever we start to build out. We're going to build out a real project. So once we do that, we'll move into the code editor, and it'll help us to control our files and do some other things with our local machine. Now you can set that up with codepen. So they have what's called a pro account, and then they have a free account. So if you want to set up a free account, just go to codepen.io, and the free account allows you to do all this that I'm showing on the page here. The pro account allows me to do some teaching and some other things that are kind of on the back end. And it also allows me, a few different views and things like that that help me as a web developer, because I use this in my work. So if as you get comfortable, as you get more experienced, maybe you would like to bump up to the pro level as well. You can also save, these are called pens, code pens, and you can save pens as private. So whenever you don't have a pro account, then all of your pins are saved and people can access them through your public profile. Alright, so that's CodePen. And then the next one I want to show you is called Atom. Now Atom is created by the guys who made GitHub. So I don't know if you're familiar with GitHub. GitHub is a repository, or kind of like a space in the cloud for you to put your code so that everybody can see it and share, and they can collaborate together to change code or to work together to create software or websites or whatever you want to create. Now Atom is a full-fledged text editor. It looks just like this. It is free, and then they have Windows. I don't remember if they have, I believe they have a Mac version somewhere at some point. But I know if you're a Windows user, for sure, it's a good program to use. So this is what I use, both in personal projects and at work. And when you open it, it looks like this. But mostly it's just a generic text editor, but it has a lot of powerful features. There's a lot of customization that you can do to it, and you can see here that you can control your folder structures. So when you open a folder, it allows you to kind of keep more control as you're working on particular parts of it. So they're working on something, down in here, and then it saves it, and you can move and manipulate your files in the structure and things like that. So it's a little bit um, more complex than just using Notepad or something like that. So, and it looks better. But speaking of Notepad, another option. This is Atom is free to download, by the way. Notepad++ also is free. This is kind of a place where people have historically started out in web design because it's a very small program, and it's kind of like Notepad in Windows, except it has more ability. You can see right here in the toolbar you have some more options to do different things, but it is created specifically for Windows. I don't own a Mac, so you're gonna have to find a text editor that's right for you for the Mac, and this is what I have historically written in before I started using Atom. So I think it's a really good option. And then if you really don't have anything and you can't get anything, just good old Notepad will work as well. I started when I started in web design almost 20 years ago. I just started using Notepad, and then when I had my own machine, then I could download Notepad++. But just at the library using Notepad, that was how I started to learn HTML. So it does work and it's fine, and it will save into all the file formats that we need to save into. So if you're hard up and you really need something like Notepad, you can just use Notepad. It works great. Alright, so that's the tools, and we're going to get started on our first pen here. So let's take a look. So if I look in my public pens, then I have one here. Okay, so in this first tutorial, we're just going to go through the basics of HTML5 headings. Now, I can't possibly teach you every single thing. A lot of things you're going to have to learn on your own. But I can teach you the things that I use on a daily basis in order to create websites for production websites. That just means that websites that are live and that people use and they're professional. And so these are the kinds of things that I would go through on a normal basis in order to make a web page. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is headings. So when you think about a website, remember that the web is a publishing platform. So there's a lot of crossovers with publishing and publishing ideas and publishing terms. So on a website page, you have a heading, you have paragraphs, you have lists, you have things like headers and footers and the body. So all of these terms that we use are terms that you're going to find in the publishing world as well, because you are essentially publishing your thoughts, ideas, your graphics, whatever it is, you're publishing them for the world to see. So this is your own individual publishing platform. So we're going to use similar terms, and one of those is the headings. Now, the way that HTML works, and I'm just going to let you in on watching it, is we have a structure like this. So you're going to be using the angle brackets. So we need angle brackets at the beginning, and we need angle brackets with a slash. That's going to be how we differentiate each line of text, because you can see over here nothing gets differentiated. It's all just one single stream of text. So even though there's some space in here, the browser is not regarding that space. It's just printing everything out as one big line of text. Now we need to do something to stop the browser at the beginning and the end. And what we do is we essentially sandwich these two things. So wherever you want that to begin and wherever you want that to end, you sandwich those things with tags. And so these are called HTML tags. And for heading tags, we write H, and then we have several different numbers that we can choose, and H1 actually creates the largest size. So it seems a little funny because it's the lowest number, but you just have to kind of train your mind to know that 1 is the largest and 6 is the smallest. And so whenever we start a tag, we need to close the tag with the exact same number. So H1 starts, and then slash H1 is the ending tag. And so we wrap that around the element that we want to have that bold heading. So you can see here that it creates a bold heading, and it's much larger than the other text. So this is all rendered in the browser. The browser knows whenever there's an H1 heading that it does a specific thing to the text that's inside that tag. Okay, so whenever there's an H1, this browser, I'm using Chrome. You could use Firefox, you could use I don't know, you can use Safari or Opera, or you could use any web browser that you want to use. Every web browser is going to render this HTML this way. So you can see already that we have a nice bold heading. And then if we come down to the second line, we have our tag. And then in this one, we're going to say H2. And then we're going to go to the end of that. We're going to say slash H2. And now you can see that we have another bold heading. And it's a little smaller than the first, but still bigger than what we have down here. This is called our paragraph text. So this is the size of just normal text on the page when you haven't done anything to it. And we're just going to continue down here. We're going to say H3. And then we're going to close that, H3. So you can see now, you can see the hierarchy here of our sizing at least. So all of our heading tags are going to be by default bold, but you can see how the size is changing as we go down. And then we'll do H4. Okay, so a little bit smaller. Essentially you have the same size here as this text, it's just bold. And then H5. So now you can see that we're getting smaller than our normal paragraph text, but it's still bold. And then rarely would you use H6, but you might find yourself using H6. So H6 is a heading 6 tag. And then you can see here that this would be like fine print and down at the bottom of a website. So each of these different parts of the text have their own usage, you know. When the web started with scientists who were trying to share their information across great distances with one another without having to mail it through the post. And so they were able to digitally put their work into a website, and then other people could access that website page. So what they've done is they've created headings like you would see if you've gone to college and you've had to do a research paper, or maybe you've done that in high school. There are different headings and levels of headings on the page, and so these headings here, H1, H2, H3, they correspond to a hierarchy of headings within a document like that, like a research paper. So you might have the main title, and then for the next one, you know, you have a different style for your first level of headings, and then you have a different style for your second level of headings and your third level, and so on. So that as you move through the page, you can always see visually, okay, this is a main heading or a main topic, and then this is a subtopic, and this is a subtopic of that. So that's how HTML5 HTML was made in the first place. And so whenever we look at a web page like this that doesn't have any extra styling, because you can make these look like anything you want to with CSS, but just in the HTML you can really see the rigid structure of you can see the structure of the entire document. And so if we have more information on here like paragraphs and things like that, you would really be able to see the hierarchy and how that works. Now these are important because the H1 tag has more importance than the H6 because it's the higher tag, it's the higher part of the hierarchy. So your H1 tag is usually reserved for things like your site name or your main site tagline, things like that. Uh, Things that are very important to the page, and consequently, whenever Google comes to your website and it begins to um, document or archive your page so that other people can find your information through a Google search, it looks first at H1 tags and then begins to move down the page, cataloging that information, but also saying H1 is most important, H2 is second in importance, H3 is third in importance, and it moves down the page that way. So the way you structure your page has a lot of bearing on the way that Google sees your page and your information. So one of the things that we have to always think about is the actual structure of the HTML page. And like I said, this is, you can think of it like the bones of your body. So there's a rigid structure to your body that gives you a particular shape and allows different things to connect to one another. That if your bones were done differently, maybe things wouldn't be able to connect in the same way. And you'll find that you can manipulate the HTML in order to make writing JavaScript a little easier or writing CSS easier, that type of thing. So the way that we write this code has major effects on number one, the way the website, how fast it's downloaded, um, and how modular that we can make some of the other elements that we're doing, which just means that we can use kind of one declaration to cover a lot of different things, which improves performance overall. So that is our first introduction to both the tools and to the heading tags for HTML5. If you have any questions, I hope that you leave them down in the comments section. I encourage you to subscribe to this channel so that you can get more as I release more HTML5 basics videos. And we'll be covering all the different parts first, and then after that we'll put together a sample project, like maybe a one-page website, so that you would be able to actually create a website on your own. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.